Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the synthesis of yoga with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 56, beginning with the sentence, "Another kind of Shastra is not scripture."
We are in the chapter called the Four Aids. And he has told you what they are. He has listed them in the first paragraph of the chapter. There are four powers that help you. Okay, so the first is the Shastra. The religious texts that abound all over the world, there are many, many types, and they are scriptures. Okay, the Bible, the Quran, the Gita, Upanishads, Vedas, the Avesta, there are so many different types. So, he has been discussing the Shastra. Then the next is the Utsaha, your own enthusiasm, your own effort that you put in. That also is a factor in your progress. Then the next one is the Guru, the teacher who guides you. This is a uniquely Indian concept. The concept of the Guru is not there so much. Perhaps in Buddhism it is there to a certain extent. And in any case, it is not formalized as it is in India. So that's a Guru. And finally, you have to give enough credit and enough patience you must have to allow time to let your effort come to maturity. Kala, you can't afford to be impatient. Or human beings are naturally impatient, they want immediate results. It's very common nowadays in companies to say, I want this done yesterday. That won't do in yoga. You have to, it is not only yesterday, not even today, you should be prepared for even 100 years.
Another life.
Life and 100 years. Patience is absolutely essential, and that is what is the last, the instrumentality of time, Kala. So, you have Shastra, you have the Guru, Utsaha, you have the Guru, and you have the Kala. And you can see that everything in the world, there is a period of maturity for everything. The baby is born in 9 months. If it is premature, there are problems. If it is too late also, there are problems. The rice in the fields also takes a fixed time. Wheat, everything. The fruits also come in time and in season. So Kala is a very important thing, and you have to allow time to take its own course. So he has been discussing the Shastras, and now we are going to discuss the another kind of Shastra, he is going to say. So we'll read that. Okay? And he has also told you that no Shastra can ever capture the eternal, infinite truth which is unexpressed. The moment you try to put that into words, you are necessarily limiting it. Therefore, every Shastra should be taken as a help, but never as the absolute and last word. Never. And that statement can apply even to life. We should never think that what I am thinking is the ultimate truth. You must always allow some leeway for the opponent's ideas also. That will give you wide-mindedness also. But in yoga, the idea that my scripture is the ultimate truth is not tenable in spirituality. It won't do. So, that is what some of the religions do, but that's entirely wrong, and in due time, with Kala, they will realize that that's not to be insisted on.
But it's even worse in Christianity and Islam.
In Christianity and Islam also it is there. To a certain extent it is there in the Jewish religion also. They think that theirs is the last word of truth.
Yes.
And it is not that it is absent absolutely in India. Okay, because those who are following one particular path, they feel that that's the best, and they insist on that. There are many people who insist that you should become a disciple of Sri Aurobindo. Okay, that sort of attitude has to be completely negated. You should not. In fact, it's not necessary for anyone to be forced to come to Sri Aurobindo. If the interest is there by itself in somebody, you can help them. but never try to force anyone to come to any particular path. Each soul has got its own nature and its own destiny. So you must allow that to happen. Okay. So now we read and he says this about the Gita also. He says in the Essays on the Gita that even the Gita, although it is a magnificent text and is the last word in Karma Yoga, we should take it only as a help and not stick to it like the absolute truth. Because the absolute truth uses words and ideas which are limited. They have to have form. But the truth is formless, eternal, infinite. How can you express something eternal and infinite in time and space? Not possible. It has to be necessarily limited. You were asking about Savitri, but Savitri is probably the best that could be expressed, or even better than best that could be expressed in the physical world. But it is still not the ultimate truth. Sri Aurobindo himself tells you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, when Narad Baran told him that there was still two chapters to go, death and the
That's right.
and the last one,
Yeah.
he said, "We will see about that later."
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. The Book of Death.
Book of Death.
There are some cantos still to be done. So let's start another kind of Shastra is not scripture, but a statement of the science and methods, the effective principles and way of working of the path of yoga, which the sadhaka elects to follow. Each path has its own Shastra, each written or traditional, passing from mouth to mouth through a long line of teachers. In India, a great authority, a high reverence even, is ordinarily attached to the written or traditional teaching. Note, interestingly, he is making a difference between traditional and written. In other words, it is handed down orally, some of the teaching, because the Guru is there. All the lines of the yoga are supposed to be fixed, and the teacher who received the Shastra by tradition and realized it in practice guides the disciple along the immemorial tracks. One often even hears the objection urged against a new practice, a new yogic teaching, the adoption of a new formula. It is not according to the Shastra. But neither in fact nor in the actual practice of the yogins is there really any such entire rigidity of an iron door shut against new truth, fresh revelation, widened experience. The written or traditional teaching expresses the knowledge and experiences of many centuries, systematized, organized, made attainable to the beginner. Its importance and utility are therefore immense. But a great freedom of variation and development is always practicable. Even so, highly scientific a system as Raja Yoga can be practiced on other lines than the organized method of Patanjali. Each of the three paths of the Trimarga breaks into many bypaths which meet again at the goal. The general knowledge on which the yoga depends is fixed, but the order, the succession, the devices, the forms must be allowed to vary. For the needs and particular impulsions of the individual nature have to be satisfied, even while the general truths remain firm and constant. So, some of the Ishvara Shastra, Sri Aurobindo's path is definitely there is a path clearly, but he has written the synthesis, of yoga, and he has also given you but the guidance is there in the letters more. Yeah, the guidance is there in the letters. Not that there is no method. There is a method also, but the method is not very clearly defined in Sri Aurobindo's yoga because each individual has his own nature, and what is right for one person may not be right for another person. In fact, in the ashram, if you see the letters, they would often give contradictory advice to two different people. Someone says, I feel like isolating myself and remaining in my room and not going out. Sri Aurobindo says, fine, do that. It suits you. If somebody else says that, Sri Aurobindo will say the opposite. No, the tendency of a withdrawal from life is too much for you. Go and mix with people. Not necessarily over-mixing, but not avoiding mixing with people. Okay? So this is how, and if some people are too social, he will say, cut down your sociability and withdraw yourself inwards. So it varies for each individual. That's why I say that the detailed guidance is there mostly in the letters. He has given also principles, but letters. So, we'll quickly go through each sentence because there are a few things which need mention. Okay? Another kind of Shastra is not scripture, because scripture will limit you to the path that you want to follow, but Sri Aurobindo path is very wide. Okay? But a statement of the science and its methods. I think this sentence applies very well to the synthesis itself. Okay? Another kind of Shastra is not scripture, but a statement of the science and its methods. He breaks down the synthesis of yoga, first of all the introduction, then the conditions of the synthesis. He says, I want a synthesis. But then he starts examining Jnana Yoga first, then Karma Yoga, then the third he examines the path of devotion, that is the works of love, and finally he comes to the integral perfection, his own method. So there is guidance and there is, but it's mostly an exposition of principles more than guidance. As I said, because guidance will differ from person to person. So, another kind of Shastra is not scripture, but a statement of the science and its methods, the effective principles and way of working on the path of yoga, which the sadhak elects to follow. The sadhak is free to choose what he wants to follow. There should be no imposition on him at all. Each path has its Shastra, either written or traditional, passing from mouth to mouth through a long line of teachers. In India, a great authority, a high reverence even, is ordinarily attached to the written or traditional teaching. All the lines of the yoga are supposed to be fixed. That's a problem with the integral yoga. They are not fixed. Okay, they are flexible. All the lines of the yoga are supposed to be fixed, and the teacher who has received the Shastra by tradition and realized it in practice guides the disciple along the immemorial tracks. One often hears the objection raised against a new practice, a new yogic teaching, the adoption of a new formula. It is not according to the Shastra. Now here I can mention 3 facts, and one of them relates to Sri Aurobindo himself. Okay? Dilip Kumar Roy asks him that you want to go even beyond, because Sri Aurobindo is introducing the integral yoga. So he says, you want to go even beyond the Gita? So then Sri Aurobindo has to explain to him that evolution means that the past is absolutely right up to a certain point. But that's not the ultimate truth. You have to go beyond that. So if you say that the past is the perfect, then evolution, the idea, is not valid anymore. So it is very, very natural for you to go beyond the scripture and the Shastra. In this case, I can mention 3 things. So this is what Sri Aurobindo said. That's the first thing that one can mention. The other 2 is one incident of Ramakrishna and the other of Vivekananda himself. So in Ramakrishna's case, he had tremendous experience and he is telling his own experience, and one of the disciples there, maybe not even disciple, he was hearing, and he told Ramakrishna that this is not what the Vedanta says. What you are saying, the Vedanta does not say that. So his reply is, I spit upon your Vedanta. So, how powerful. He says, I damn care for your tradition and I am experiencing. I know what the truth is. So that's what Sri Aurobindo is hinting at here. You don't need to stick yourself to any one point. The same thing happened with Vivekananda also. When he was traveling on foot all over India, he was passing through Madras, and one of the Rajas in the south actually funded his trip to America. Okay, so he was a parivrat. He was a wandering monk. No money, nothing. He's just wandering. So he came to Madras, and in South India, they follow very strictly the methods, and there is a certain amount of rigidity also. It's there all over India, but in the south it is there. And this Pandit told Vivekananda that what you are saying, the Shastra does not say that. So Vivekananda's response was very, very firm. He said, but I, Vivekananda, say it. So, and Srimad has mentioned this in the synthesis, okay? No, in the letters. He has mentioned this. And then he says something very interesting. He says, this is not arrogance. This is the self-confidence in the truth that he knows. So, those who are judging superficially will never be able to get the right thing. We don't know. But he says that is the self-confidence that he had. So, that's what Srimad is saying. You often hear that this is not according to the Shastra. So, too much of importance should not be given to that sort of objection. Okay? So, but neither in fact nor in the actual practice of the yogins is there really any such entire rigidity or of an iron door shut against new truth, fresh revelation, widened experience. So here, two things can be mentioned about Sri Aurobindo Yoga. First is that each individual follows his own path. So there is wide amount of variation possible. Secondly, he says that still there is a system. The first is to awake the psychic being. The first is to put yourself in touch with the divine in some way or other. Through the mind or through the heart or even through the body, you make yourself. That's the first. Then you go to the next step where the divine starts helping you because the connection is made with the divine. So first is your own effort. Second stage is the divine helps you and your effort continues. And the third stage is that your effort ceases because the divine has now taken up your responsibility and is totally guiding you. So these are the three steps, but the last step is not easy. It's very, very high up. It normally doesn't apply to the normal yogin. So, but he says that these three are not necessarily serial. You can have a touch of the divine first and then your interest can come. So he says, so you can see the flexibility. That's what I'm mentioning, that is not fixed. There is a great amount of flexibility in Sri Aurobindo Yoga. Okay, so not according to the Shastra. But neither in fact nor in the actual practice of the yogins is there really any such entire rigidity of an iron door shut against new truth, fresh revelation, widened experience. The written or traditional teaching expresses the knowledge and experiences of many centuries, systematized, organized, made attainable to the beginner. Its importance and utility are therefore immense. But a great freedom of variation and development is always practicable. Even so highly scientific a system as Raja Yoga can be practiced on other lines than the organized method of Patanjali, which is called the Raja Yoga. We'll discuss that after I finish the paragraph. Each of the three paths of the Trimarga. The Trimarga is the Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. Okay, so each one changes their methods according to the part of the system, part of your being that you are focusing on. If you are focusing on the mind, Jnana Yoga. If you are focusing on the heart and the emotional side, Bhakti Yoga. If you are concentrating on the body and trying to go through the body, the Hatha Yoga. Okay, so Karma Yoga, all action is turned towards the divine with a will. So these are the different systems. Each of the three paths of the Trimarga breaks into many bypaths which meet again at a goal. The general knowledge on which the yoga depends is fixed, but the order, the succession, the devices, the forms must be allowed to vary. For the needs and particular impulsions of the individual nature have to be satisfied even while the general truths remain firm and constant. For instance, we can say one thing, the devices he is talking about, there are any number of asanas, okay, to give flexibility and good health to the body. You can invent your own asana. Who is stopping you? After all, these are made by the human beings. So you are also a human being. So there is no fixity, so they say. That pranayama, there are fixed methods of pranayama. Okay? They say the breathing out should be deeper than the breathing in. Say 4 counts of breathing in, 6 or 8 counts of breathing out. So there are different types of systems. But you can find out what is suitable for you. There is no need to completely follow what the others are saying. So there is a great amount of flexibility. That's what he is mentioning. And he is mentioning that Raj Yoga is a very scientific system. So is the Hatha Yoga. Very, very systematic and very, very well worked out. All the chakras are there. Each chakra is given its due importance and its function. And they go to such an extent, these chakras are actually in the subtle body and they are worlds of energy. So they are often seen as petals. If you have subtle sight, you will see them as petals. They don't exist in the physical body, but they do exist in the subtle body. And these are energy worlds. And pranic healing, what you do, there is a great truth to that. When there is an injury, the beautiful pattern of the energy formation gets disturbed, it gets broken. It goes here and there. So with the pranic healing, you restore the regularity and the normality of the different chakras. But it doesn't always work. It works for a certain time, and if the injury is serious, then the defect can again occur. But it can work. Okay? So that's what Swamdar said about another kind of Shastra which need not be rigid. Okay? So, an integral and synthetic yoga. Now he comes to his own. An integral and synthetic yoga needs especially not to be bound by any written or traditional Shastra. For while it embraces the knowledge received from the past, it seeks to organize it anew for the present and the future. An absolute liberty of experience and of the restatement of knowledge in new terms and new combinations is a condition of its self-formation. Okay? Because what was valid 100 years ago or even 200 years ago, the pace of life and the quality of life has now changed all over, everywhere. Today I am here, tomorrow I will be in the US, and sometimes you may be elsewhere, you will be traveling all over the world. How do you do the yoga? You can't sit 4 hours, 5 hours in meditation. So other methods have to be devised. That's exactly why the integral yoga comes into the picture. Okay, so the paragraph is continuing. Seeking to embrace all life in itself. Which one? The integral yoga. It is in the position not of a pilgrim following the high road to his destination, but to that extent at least of a pathfinder hewing his way through a virgin forest. So each one has to find out his own path. So, of course, the guidance is there. In fact, that's what we are reading, the guidance, how to do it. There are clear methods. He gives methods. But you have to discover your own path. For yoga has long diverged from life and the ancient systems which sought to embrace it, such as those of our Vedic forefathers, are far away from us, expressed in terms which are no longer accessible, thrown into forms which are no longer applicable. Since then, mankind has moved forward on the current of eternal time, and the same problem has to be approached from a new starting point. So, he uses another image somewhere else. He says that we shall use the old capital. The old capital is all the knowledge of the yogas put in the past, but now we will use that capital for new type of activities. He is using an industrial image. So the old capital is there, we will use it. But now we will make new industrial products or yogic products, if you want. He has said that elsewhere. I am just mentioning how he uses images for that. So, clear? So what to do? We start again from the beginning and go through quickly.
Yes, fine. I just wanted to discuss the point on which Mother says we must get rid of the past, which weighs us down.
Yeah. That has got two meanings. Okay. One meaning is the universal. That's what Srimad is telling us. Don't get bogged down and think that the past discoveries are the absolute. That is one truth. But there is another deeper truth. And that's at the individual level itself. Okay. At the individual level, there is a law of karma, the law of causality. It is the past that determines your present, and the present determines your past. The law of causality is the law of karma. So, if you want to progress, you must cut your influence of the past on you. So, you must get rid of the past. Getting rid of the exact quotation I don't remember, but getting rid of the past, let us run towards a luminous future.
Yes, yes.
What is the first?
Which is always before us.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So, this is the thing, and the past is always dragging you back. Okay? What has happened is something fixed and it is dragging you back. This also has got a function in the physical world, because if this action of the dragging you down to what you were before is not there, then there won't be stability. So that also has got its own function. Just like tamas also has got its own function. It is valid at a certain stage. But when you want to progress, you have to deny, you have to get rid of your tamas.
But there are things in the past that have helped the psychic being to progress.
Absolutely. Because it's a slow progress. And there are elements in the past which will always help you, and you have to take support of that and jump. It's like a springboard. Or you can also think of it as Srimdo's phrase, the ego is the helper and now the ego is the bar.
Ego is the bar.
The mind is the helper, but the mind becomes a bar. Okay? And this is true of anything. Srimdo says even at the overmind level. So, the past is always dragging you down. It has got its function because that ensures stability, and the progress, if it is too fast, you will stumble. So you have to go step by step. Leaving the past far behind us, let us run towards a luminous future. An integral and synthetic yoga needs especially, also it's a question of language, Srimdo uses the word especially always. He doesn't use the word specially. It means the same thing. Okay? Or there are many words like that. There is also, but he uses one particular word and not the other one. So, especially he often uses. An integral and synthetic yoga needs especially not to be bound by any written or traditional shastra. For while it embraces the knowledge received from the past, it seeks to organize it anew for the present and the future. An absolute liberty of experience and of the restatement of knowledge in new terms and new combinations is a condition of its self-formation. Nowadays, people who are traveling, they spend a lot of time in travel. So when you are on the plane, what are you going to do? You are going to sit and lotus posture and start. You can't do that. So different methods are there which Srimdo gives you how to do. Mostly psychological. See, Jnana Yoga, the Hatha Yoga, and the Karma, the Jnana Yoga, Raj Yoga, and these are very, very clear. They even tell you how to sit, exactly your posture, sitting too high, too low, it should not be neither of that. So there are very clear instructions. But Srimdo's yoga is mostly psychological. It's a question of applying the laws of the mind and the heart. Not so much the physical. He doesn't tell you not to do asanas. He doesn't tell you don't do asanas. He doesn't tell you don't do pranayama. He himself did pranayama for a long time. But it's not necessary. There are subtler and more powerful methods, and maybe better methods also in psychology. That's what you have to do. Surrender, appealing to the divine for help, concentration. There's so many different things. An absolute liberty of experience and of the restatement of knowledge in new terms and new combinations is a condition of its self-formation. Then, seeking to embrace all life in itself. Now we have to understand this. The other yogas are not embracing all life. They are running away. The Jnana Yogi wants only to concentrate on his, in the mind. He doesn't care for his emotions, nor for the body. But the Hatha Yogin is caring only for the body, too much. He doesn't care about the other things. The Bhakta is caring only about his emotions. He doesn't care for knowledge. So Srimad is saying, seeking to embrace all life in itself. Everything we will accept. Okay? It is in the position not of a pilgrim following the high road to his destination, but to that extent at least of a pathfinder hewing his way through a virgin forest. For yoga has long diverged from life, and the ancient systems which sought to embrace it, such as those of our Vedic forefathers. He is mentioning the Vedic forefathers precisely because they accepted all life. They did not deny the reality of the physical world. They did not run away from the world. In fact, at that time, you can see that Indian culture at that time was very, very developed even in its material field. Okay? The ancients knew about astronomy. They knew about metallurgy. There was any amount of surgery. Okay, Susruta. Okay, so everywhere the physical world was not neglected at all. In fact, the metallurgy was something fantastic. They used to make swords here, which people from Arabia and other countries used to come and buy. They used to give us horses because we didn't have horses. So they used to bring their horses and take back these swords and all that. There are even today, not only in Delhi, but in Karnataka, one place, where for thousands of years, that pillar that has not rusted. How come? They knew there was so much of knowledge of metallurgy. So there was no, and not to mention the 64 Shastras. There is a Shastra for everything, for dancing, for music, for even statecraft. Okay? Everything was there in finance. Okay? Everything was there. All the Shastras were there. Even to the extent of the Kama Sutra, for instance. Enjoyment of sex, nothing was rejected. I'm not saying that was part of your yoga, but no rejection of the physical world. That's why he's mentioning the Vedic forefathers, which sought to embrace life, such as those of our Vedic forefathers. What I'm saying should not be misinterpreted, because certain things are certainly to be avoided. The point is that they avoided nothing in the Vedic period. In the Vedic period, there was intense interest in the physical world also. That didn't necessarily form part of yoga, but there was no lack of interest in the physical world.
And Sri Aurobindo has written so much on the Vedas.
Yes, of course. But that's all spiritual knowledge. Not the Shastra that I'm referring to.
True.
Okay, so. And in fact, he's mentioning this because in the Vedas, very clearly it says, the heaven is my father and the earth is my mother. So there is acceptance of both, the superconscient as well as the inconscient. There is no rejection of either, which came later on. The Indian yogas started rejecting to make it simpler. Integral yoga is not simple, but he wants, that's the aim. It's not simple. It becomes very difficult. Okay. Vedic forefathers are far away from us, expressed in terms which are no longer accessible. You see, in India, we knew that the Vedas were great spiritual knowledge, but it was expressed in a language which nobody understands now, and so due respect is given to the Vedic. Even there are schools, Vedic Pathshalas, where they recite the Vedas and they know them by heart. Ask them the meaning. I doubt very much how much meaning they understand. Okay, particularly in the south, also in the Brahmins, they have to learn all these by heart. Even our Anish in the ashram, okay, Anish Raghavan, he knew the Purusha Sukta by heart when he was a 5-year-old or 6-year-old. But ask him anything, now he knows what it means because he's done his PhD in Sanskrit. But at that time he didn't know anything. He told me this himself. So, the Vedic lore, the Vedic tradition has continued, but nobody knew what it meant. But due respect was given to it. In the racial memory, the greatness of the Vedas was recognized. But meaning, only Sri Aurobindo has been able to recover. And even Sri Aurobindo, although he has done tremendous work, he has not been able to translate all the 4 Vedas. Even the Rig Veda fully he has not been able to translate. We have 2 books on that, The Secret of the Veda and the Hymns to the Mystic Fire. So he has done some translations also. And I can tell you, if you read those, you will also be very confused. What the hell are they talking about? It's all symbolic. Okay. They talk of Varuna, they talk of Indra, they talk of Maruts, they talk of Ashwins. So who are these people and what are they? The Angirasa Rishis. We must know exactly what psychological thing they are referring to. Saraswati. Sri Aurobindo found out that Saraswati means intuition. This means that. This means this. He could make out all these, what they mean, with his own experience. So, the Vedic systems, which sought far away from us, expressed in terms which are no longer accessible, thrown into forms which are no longer applicable. Since then, mankind has moved forward on the current of eternal time, and the same problem has to be approached from a new starting point. That's why Sri Aurobindo had to necessarily invent the integral yoga. By this yoga, he means the integral yoga, we not only seek the infinite, but we call upon the infinite to unfold himself in human life. I'll read the whole para first. Therefore, the Shastra of our yoga must provide for an infinite liberty in the receptive human soul, a free adaptability in the manner and the type of the individual's acceptance of the universal and transcendent into himself is the right condition for the full spiritual life in man. Vivekananda, pointing out that the unity of all religions must necessarily express itself by an increasing richness of variety in its forms, said once that the perfect state of that essential unity would come when each man had his own religion, when, not bound by sect or traditional form, he followed the free self-adaptation of his nature in its relations with the Supreme. So also, one may say that the perfection of the integral yoga will come when each man is able to follow his own path of yoga, pursuing the development of his own nature in its upsurging towards that which transcends the nature. For freedom is the final law and the last consummation. Give full value to that last sentence. For freedom is the final law and the last consummation. And this applies to everything in life, not only spirituality. Sri Aurobindo was very, very particular that everything has to be on the basis of freedom. So all those systems, whether they are political or whether they are social, where there is no freedom, wrong. He absolutely wants freedom. Because each soul has got its own path and he must be free to follow the bent of his own nature. You shouldn't impose anything on him. This has to be recognized. Unfortunately, it is not. Very often the parents insist on the child following one particular line of education, but that's wrong. You should be able to allow the child to develop on his own. You may not give proper value to it, but he should be allowed to develop his own. That is the reason why, however defective it is and however presented, that film, Three Idiots, is very right in essence. Okay? Because it says that you must be able to have freedom, even in your education. Okay? No insistence on only one path. That point they got it right. Okay, so for freedom is the final law and the last consummation. Even in economic life, okay, he was not for statecraft and state control. Sri Aurobindo was always for freedom, always. So, I read each sentence. There are a few things which you need to see. But this yoga, very clearly he is talking of, this yoga means his own yoga. We not only seek the infinite. The we means those who are following the integral path. Okay? Very clearly, when he's saying, it applies to the integral path. But we call upon the infinite to unfold himself in human life. Human life. Whether you are a doctor, whether you are a football player, or whether you are an engineer, your life you call the divine down and continue to do what you are doing. So, and you are inviting the infinite to come into you. Okay? Therefore, the Shastra of our yoga must provide, you have to give full importance to the word our. He is talking of his own yoga, okay, not other yogas. Must provide for an infinite liberty in the receptive human soul. Now, receptive human soul. Your soul will receive something which my soul may not. Your soul may be open to knowledge. My soul may be open to love. So, the receptive human soul must be allowed to develop on its own path. So, that's why importance is given so much to freedom. Infinite liberty. He is using the word infinite liberty. Okay? So, infinite liberty in the receptive human soul. That soul which is receiving the divine guidance. A free adaptability in the manner and the type of the individual's acceptance of the universal and transcendent into himself is the right condition for the full spiritual life of man. Here a little bit of it is good to mention that the divine expresses himself in three ways. The first is he exists by himself without any manifestation. In that, that's the transcendent. When you experience the transcendent, only the divine is there and there is no world. He is not yet created the world. That is the transcendent. Then when he creates the world, he himself comes down into the world and remains there in the background. So that's a universal. When you have a cosmic consciousness, you are in the universal consciousness. Then the universe produces the individual. It's like we say, it's like a collapsible telescope. Okay? 1, 2, 3. The divine is creating the universe and the universe is creating the individual. And the individual has to first universalize himself and then he has to go to the transcendent. That is the aim of integral yoga. So first is the universalization of yourself. What does that mean? That means your limitations disappear. You realize that your soul is the soul of all. Essentially. It's different and yet it is one with everybody else. Then you experience the transcendent also. And get that to come down into yourself. So, a free adaptability in the manner and type of the individual acceptance of the universal and transcendent into himself is the right condition for the full spiritual life of man. Normally, in India, the yoga goes up to either the transcendent or the universal, but not necessarily both. Buddhism goes to the transcendent and disappears into the infinite, mostly. Okay? The other yogas go up to the spiritual planes of consciousness and are very satisfied with liberation, but not transformation of the physical. So if they are mentioning also transformation of the individual, your body-mind life will change entirely. In the traditional systems, you have liberation and you are very satisfied. The soul has realized itself. Your consciousness has realized who you are. But the body-mind life is an instrumentation which you can throw away. It's like the scaffolding which can be thrown away when the building is built. So the body-mind life they don't care for. Sri Aurobindo wants the body-mind life also. The individual. Call down the universal and the transcendent in the individual. So, that's the speciality of the integral yoga. Transformation of mind, transformation of vital, transformation even of the body. Okay. Vivekananda pointing out that the unity of all religions must necessarily express itself by an increasing richness of variety in its forms. No limitation, everything will be allowed, all the different varieties. Said once that the perfect state of the essential unity would come when each man had his own religion, when not bound by sect or traditional form, he followed the free self-adaptation of his nature in its relations with the Supreme. So here also we can mention something. When the divine is issuing out of himself who is one, the different souls, each soul is given a particular nature. Each soul has different nature. Not that when two souls have realized the divine, their nature is the same. One shouldn't think in that way. It's not a monotonous oneness. It's not a uniformity. It's a unity, but a diverse unity. There can be different. Look at very interesting, we can see very clearly. Mother and Sri Aurobindo were both divine. Mother is into music and painting. And Sri Aurobindo was into literature. No music or painting in him. Painting opened out in him, but he was not a painter. So, this is the thing what he's saying. Each soul has got its own nature and there can be infinite variation. And in a spiritual community, he says that each soul will be different, will not be absolutely the same. Essentially, there will be a sameness, but there will be variation also. It's like the orchestra, which he uses, the image of the orchestra. 100 instruments, all playing different things, but no clash, perfect harmony. That's what will be the supramental race. Each soul will be different, but there will be perfect harmony. Okay, so good. Then, not bound by any sect or traditional form, he followed the free self-adaptation in his relations with the Supreme. Note that each soul has got a particular relation with God. Okay, your relation with God may be quite different from another relation. Okay, so also one may say that the perfection of the integral yoga will come when each man is able to follow his own path of yoga, pursuing the development of his own nature in its upsurging towards that which transcends the nature. So what does he mean by nature? Very clearly, your body-mind life. The outer nature is your body-mind life. The soul also has its nature, but you have to transcend the body-mind life nature and go to the spiritual nature. Para prakriti, apara prakriti. The lower nature and the higher nature. Okay? So, and this is very interesting because the Gita also deals with it, although that's a subject for essay on the Gita. But he says, the Gita says that everybody must follow his own swabhava and swadharma. That would be the most fruitful for him to follow his own nature rather than the nature of others. There is much more to be discussed there, but I just mentioned it, that this point is there in the Gita also. So, same as I told you, freedom is essential. Now he says, meanwhile, certain general lines have to be formed which may help to guide the thought and practice of the sadhaka. Okay? But these must take as much as possible the form of general truths, general statements of principle, the most powerful broad directions of effort and development, rather than a fixed system which has to be followed as a routine. That's not necessary. All Shastra is the outcome of past experience and a help to future experience. It's an aid and a partial guide. Note the word partial guide, not a complete guide. It puts up signposts, gives the names of the main roads and the already explored directions so that the traveler may know whither and by what paths he is proceeding. The rest depends upon personal effort and experience and upon the power of the guide. So now he will take up the personal effort, which is utsaha, and the power of the guide, which is the guru. So that's what he will deal with next. So first he will deal with the utsaha, and then he will deal with the guru. What should be the attitude of the guru, that also he will tell you. So we can stop here today.
Thank you, Ranga. Namaste, all. Namaste.